All right. We are, I think, on air for the first ever official Pat's Pulpit podcast. I'm Alex Shane, and I'm here with the man, the myth, the legend, Rich Hill. Rich, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. To those of you who are just tuning in, we've been at this for maybe like half an hour trying to figure out how podcasts work. We're both kind of idiotic at this, as I'm sure you can imagine based on our writing. So hopefully this is all going to go through all right. Hopefully this is going to be the first of a long series of podcasts about the Patriots and all things Patriots related. If all goes well, then we get some callers in and we'll see what happens with it. But I think this first one is going to be more of what they call in the business, a feeling out period as we try and figure out how the hell to do this.
Hopefully we can make the same mistakes faster next time. It's actually
right.
Closer to an hour.
Right, exactly. So here we find ourselves. It is July 19th. We're getting ready to start training camp in a very few short days. Before we get to that, there are obviously some things to tie up coming into last season. I think we should all start with what everyone's favorite topic has been over the past God knows how many months with Deflategate. We're going to talk about the Tom Brady appeal, what to expect out of that. We're going to talk about the AFC East in general, what the general temperature of the division is right now, and maybe finish off with the roster itself, who we're psyched to see, what we think is going to happen, and stuff like that. So, Rich, you just wrote an article on the Pulpit about the Brady appeal and what you heard going on behind the scenes. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from what I've heard is that they really wanted the verdict for this appeal to come out last week, and by they, it's kind of a a royal they. I'm not really sure who wanted it out last week. I think both sides want it done, both sides want it out, but I mean, from what I've been hearing, they just have no idea what they're doing on either side, really. I know that Brady's camp is really just rip-roaring, ready for the appeals process to start. And I think they're kind of just twiddling their thumbs until Goodell can get his act together.
Yeah. All right. So you think that Goodell had a number in mind, 1 game, 2 games, whatever. Brady's camp said, no, we're getting no games. We're going to court. Goodell doesn't want that, knows he's going to lose if that happens. Plus, it draws the whole nonsense out farther. And so they're kind of negotiating some way to make it so they don't go to court.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you just think of it, if you're the league, you're not wanting to go to court whatsoever. I mean, you've just been getting hammered left and right in the public sphere. And if you just held this monkey court of a Deflategate investigation for the past 7 months at this point, and all of a sudden you go to court and it gets overturned, you just lose all credibility. I mean, if you miss on domestic violence, if you miss on concussions, if you miss on drugs, and all of a sudden you lose on the softball of a potentially deflated football thing, then I mean, there's no hope for this leadership right now. But I mean, like, if you were Goodell, what would you do right now to try and kind of either save face from this perspective or just move forward from this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really nothing he can do at this point. I mean, he's botched everything he's ever done. And this isn't me as a Patriots fan saying this. This is like me as a football fan. This guy just needs to go. He doesn't know how to run a league. He doesn't. On one side, I will say he's very good at his job in the respect that his primary goal is to be a stooge and take all the heat. Like, that's what he does to make the league look like lesser in terms of criminality. The owners, the pressure's off them, and he takes all of the pressure. He's the lightning rod. So he's really good at that. But I think what happened is, just based on the decisions he's made this year, there's nothing he could have done at this point. And I really do believe that the Tom Brady verdict, regardless of whether he did it or not, because again, I've said from the very beginning, I don't know. I have no idea if he did it or not. Nobody does. But just based on the Ray Rice, the Adrian Peterson, Greg Hardy, the Redskins, like, everything he's touched this season has turned to crap. And so he's trying desperately to get his name back and his ability to lower the hammer back. And he did that at the expense of Tom Brady, and there's nothing he can do at this point.
Although, I mean, I don't think he's done anything at this point that would make the ownerships, the people in charge who could actually get him out of his seat. I don't think that this would do anything to disrupt any of them. I mean, we already saw Robert Kraft. He stood down as soon as possible when it came down to accepting that first-round pick penalty and $1 million. And you just saw how every other team, whether or not they had been wronged by Goodell recently or in long distant past, I mean, all of them stood behind Goodell and his decision. So I think that no matter what happens in this verdict, I don't think that this is going to have any lasting effect on Goodell and how he runs this league. I mean, and I think that he's actually going to dig in his heels and get a little more support going from right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I've tried to think of myself, like, what would need to happen to the NFL for me to stop watching? Like, what would need to take place? Obviously, it's not murder. It's not drug trafficking. It's not child abuse. It's not domestic abuse. It's not racism. It's not general debauchery. It's not dogfighting. I'm like, obviously, these things have all happened, and I'm still tuning in. I'm still giving them my money, and it's all about the bottom line at the end of the day. So I guess, like, if you know you have that kind of immunity, you can pretty much do anything you want at this point and know that the owners who kind of pay your salary are very happy in terms of the bottom line.
Yeah, part of me is kind of concerned about that, though, because I'm not sure if you saw Mark Cuban, who's the owner of the Mavericks, his quote from, I guess, maybe earlier in this year, when he was basically just saying that the NFL is overexpanding and it's kind of like a pig going to slaughter right now. It's just waiting for its legs to get cut out. But, like, I honestly don't see what that would be that would end up cutting out the NFL, other than, honestly, like, some nationwide movement talking about how unsafe this game is.
Yeah, no, I agree. At the same time, though, you also have to keep in mind that there's got to be some kind of connection to when to release this appeal, this verdict, whatever you want to call it, depending on the media cycle. I think they've been very careful and very clever in when they've released various information to keep not only the NFL in the spotlight, but Deflategate in the spotlight. Because if I'm Roger Goodell and my choices between the offseason narrative are Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson, the Redskins, or Deflategate, I'm taking Deflategate every single time. And I think he's done a really good job of making sure Deflategate is the predominant story all offseason to make sure we're still talking about that and not the other atrocities going on in the league. So I imagine whenever this appeal verdict comes out, it'll be very carefully crafted so a media cycle allows football to once again take the spotlight.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of bothers me too, because I know that they actually did want to release it during the All-Star week, and that's right when there's no games happening whatsoever, and they were ready and willing and able to do that, but then they got drawn back again to try and negotiate behind the scenes. But, like, that just feels so scummy. And, like, there's no lack of good stories that they could talk about without making and fabricating an entire issue out of thin air. I mean, like, the fact that they had to dig down to ride this one, it's just very, very disheartening.
No, it is. And especially because I feel like at this point, everyone's mind is made up in some capacity. You know, in the court of popular opinion, Tom Brady was guilty. He's never had a decent pass his entire life. Everything he's ever done is tainted. As like 30 seconds after the Colts game, when that first tweet came out, that was it for a lot of people. On the flip side, there's the overreaction on the Patriots camp where it's a witch hunt. They're out to get Tom Brady, and it's only because they're good, and the only reason that anyone cares is because of the Patriots. And there's some validity to that. But I actually don't think Roger Goodell's goal was let's make Tom Brady look guilty. I mean, I don't think that. I really don't think that was the case. Maybe you disagree with me, but I don't think his mindset was we need to pin this on Tom Brady. I just think it was either Ted Wells comes back and says, well, honestly, guys, the NFL didn't really do their job. They didn't really check. Nobody's cared before, and so no one really knows. He wasn't going to say that. And so the only real recourse was, well, maybe if we do more probable than not, generally aware, and put all the info in the footnotes, no one's going to care.
Yeah, I mean, part of me would just like to think that Ted Wells should have come back and just said that, because, I mean, that's the honest truth. And it shows that it wasn't an investigation that was without bias, just because the way that Goodell and the NFL said, oh, please don't investigate us in this whole standpoint. Don't look at us to figure out who the leaks were. Don't look too deeply onto our side to see what initiated all of this. Just look into what happened on the field with the Patriots and just only look into that. And I think that just doesn't sit well. And if anyone other than Goodell was hearing this appeal, it would just be laughed at, thrown out the window.
No, I agree. But at the same time, obviously you hire a lawyer to prove a case. That lawyer that you hired isn't going to come back and be like, well, I did my research and you're the culprit. That's just not going to happen. So I think that's just kind of again, I don't think Goodell purposely set out to screw Tom Brady here or the Patriots. It was really the only recourse after the research came back. And people are loving every second of it because it's Tom Brady.
It's true. It's true. I mean, what else is he going to do? How else is he going to rebound from this one? I know if anyone's going to have a positive takeaway from this, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be Tom Brady next year. I mean, I don't think if when the league gets that injunction and Brady's going to be stepping back onto the field in week one, I mean, he's going to rain hellfire on the entire league.
No, I agree. Speaking of single, so you think Brady will be under center week one? No problem.
I do, no question. I mean, even if it does go through that appeals and he does get a one-game suspension later on down the road, I'm sure they'll schedule it for the Washington game in week 9 or something like that. I don't even know if that's when they're playing, but he'll be there for week 1 for the opening kickoff. He'll be there so they can raise the banner. He'll be there so they can beat the Steelers. And the way that all of these appeals have been playing out, and honestly, it might not even be decided until after this upcoming year. And I honestly think that would actually be the best case for everyone involved, because it would allow everyone to be like, all right, let's step back, let's reevaluate this one. The Patriots can be like, all right, lift our penalties for this upcoming season. The league can be like, we're going to give more focus into all the information that we don't have, and we can actually determine whether or not you guys were telling the truth or not. We can see if the football is inflated 12.5 psi and the temperature drops 35 degrees, hey, does that affect footballs the exact same way that the Patriots footballs were affected during that game? And if so, everyone feel like the Patriots would be vindicated. The league would be able to say, well, we've done our research right now, and we've put additional focus in place. And I honestly think that if they kick the can for another year, I know it would be absolutely awful to listen to this for another year. But I honestly think that at this current point in time, that's the best decision where most people can save the most face.
No, I agree with that. And it'll also give the social media warriors a whole year of content to rile Pats fans. Which is,
and I love it.
Yeah, I do love it. I mean, honestly, like I said, I've said this before, like people do that because they enjoy it. It's fun to hate the Patriots. And when Patriots fans respond and get all surly, you are playing right into their hands. And it's always fun to kind of be an outside observer watching people on Facebook act like Tom Brady personally killed their children because he made hostage. It's like it's so funny how offended they get. Yeah, but I say it comes back. It's going to be maybe one game, if that. He goes to court. He's under center in 2015 September against the Steelers, and hopefully this all goes away eventually, and it's all going to be nonsense. I personally don't care about the Deflategate anymore. Anything else you want to say, or we can definitely move on here?
No, let's definitely move on.
All right, so we're going into the AFC East. I'm actually really excited for the AFC East this season. I think there's really been an improvement that we haven't seen before in prior seasons. Before, it's been the Patriots by leaps and bounds, and the rest of the teams in the division, the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins, much farther down the ladder. I think all 4 teams have made significantly good strides towards equalizing that playing field. I still do think the Patriots are the cream of the crop. They should take the division, no problem, but it's not going to be 6-0 in the division the way it has been in years past. Which of the AFC East teams right now are you most worried about?
I mean, for me, it'll always come down to the quarterback, and because of that, I'll look to Ryan Tannehill and the Dolphins. He just got his contract extension, but he's honestly the only other viable starter in the entire division. And I know that they've kind of retooled their offense a little bit. They brought in Jordan Cameron, the former tight end of the Browns. Lamar Miller is the running back. He's actually a stud in waiting. Don't be surprised if he cracks out for like 1,400 yards this year. He was pretty good last year, but for whatever reason, head coach Joe Philbin is atrocious and decided to keep him in rotation with Daniel Thomas, who can't find his way out of the locker room. Yeah. They shipped away Mike Wallace, who was a supposed deep threat, but he never connected with Tannehill. But they brought in Kenny Stills from the Saints, and he was actually one of Drew Brees' favorite targets. So I honestly think that secretly across the board, I think that the Dolphins have a very, very, very solid offense. And then on defense, we all know that they added in Ndamukong Suh, and he was the crown jewel of free agency. I wrote a little bit about the fact that sacrifices a little bit of their depth so they can make some space for that top-heavy hitter. But if he stays healthy, and by all accounts he has for his career, then I think that, honestly, that they've got a pretty formidable team on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's tough to it's tough to knock what the Jets have done because the Jets have drastically improved their team. Great, they got Brandon Marshall, they got Revis back, obviously. Their offensive line is solid. Their defensive line is probably the best in the league. But it's a first-year coach, and it's Geno Smith, which makes it really hard for me to sit here and pull the trigger on the Jets because when you have a first-year coach and a quarterback who's as inconsistent as Smith has been, it's hard to really be scared of them. But the Jets are basically a quarterback away from being nasty. So they don't scare me right now, but they will if things kind of keep going the way they are. I'm going to go with the Bills, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because Rex Ryan, there's just something about Rex Ryan. He knows how to play Bill Belichick teams tough. He knows how to play them close. They've got a very solid defense. I know EJ Manuel's kind of puttering out, but like Sammy Watkins, like they've got all the pieces in place, and the Bills have come very close very recently to upsetting the Patriots in a lot of situations. And I just see them kind of coming out swinging this year and taking it at least one game in the division series. And Rex Ryan will want to prove to whoever is listening or watching that he's not just like a one-hit wonder with the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I do worry that they'll split the season, but I don't really think that they're too much of a threat to make any real noise for this specific year. I mean, when you look at the team and how they're set up, their defense, I mean, with Rex Ryan, I mean, they're going to be a great defense. But when you looked at them last year, they were the number one defense on points allowed per drive, and that they were better than the Seahawks. So how much better can they actually get with Rex at the helm that would make a noticeable difference? And so long as that offense can't produce anything, and I mean, with EJ Manuel behind center, or Tyrod Taylor, whoever the heck they want to throw back there.
Matt Castle.
I honestly don't think. Yeah, that's true, right? I mean, if Matt Castle can put up 18 points a game, maybe they'll go 8-8. But I honestly don't see them unless they have someone step up, someone who can utilize their targets. I mean, they have Sammy Watkins, they have LaShawn McCoy, they have Charles Clay that they snagged from Miami. I mean, they have weapons up there, but I don't know if they have anyone who can use them. And I don't feel too comfortable in LaShawn McCoy being the great hope for Rex Ryan's rushing offense. I mean, if Fred Jackson comes back out and runs for another 1,000 yards, I wouldn't be surprised. But I honestly don't worry about that Bills offense one bit.
It's funny because no matter what you do, you obviously never know at the end of the day. And I just see Buffalo making a dent. And I also saw that Miami Dolphins every year they throw a ton of money at some prize free agent acquisition, and he never does anything. And I feel like Sue's going to be the same guy that he was with Mike Wallace was, but any kind of major. They seem to have a really bad luck, Miami does, with throwing a lot of money at the big free agent guy and then kind of fizzling out down the stretch. So I see that happening, but you never know.
If you look at who they've signed as their big free agent over the past years, it was Mike Wallace, Brandon Albert. There have been a couple others before then. And I think they've all just kind of either the injury bug hit them or they were just great disappointments. I mean, who did they just release this offseason or they traded away? A handful of them just because there are a few linebackers that they tried to remodel their entire defense. Then they just had to kick them all out because none of them really worked. And so I guess we do really have to wait and see for Miami to see if
just a little thing. All right, so give me right now as of July 19th, what's your AFC East division record for the Patriots?
Division record for the Patriots, I will say 4-2 with a loss to the Bills in Buffalo in Week 2 and a loss to Miami at the end of the year. Although I would not be surprised if Rex was the one who beat them both times and swept them because the Patriots would be resting their starters in Week 17. I could totally see that happening as well.
Yeah, here's hoping.
What about you?
Yeah, I'm going 4-2 as well. I'm actually going to say Bills and Jets. I think the Jets pull one out in New York just because those games are always, those games are decided by a field goal or less the past God knows how many times they played. And though the wins the Patriots have had, they've come on like blocked field goals and some kind of shenanigans that went down the field. So I think it's the Jets' turn for that crazy bounce to go their way. So I'm going to go 4-2 with the losses at Buffalo, at New York. All right, so moving on to the Patriots themselves now. We haven't really talked. It's been one of the most ridiculous off seasons, especially a Super Bowl off season when it should be celebration all the time and enjoying themselves and everyone kind of just looking forward to the next season. I think a lot of the move the Patriots have made, both in releasing players and getting players in, have gone under the radar. So I guess we'll start off by saying, what off-season move were you most surprised by this season, and which one are you most excited about? Rich, you there? You may have lost Rich Hill, everybody. Oh, is he back?
I'm here. I'm hearing you a little bit here and there.
Oh, all right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you right now.
All right, cool, great. The question was, I thought you just made like every single girl I've ever talked to on the phone and just hung up. But I see that you are back in the fold. Basically, the question I had was, this was how a kind of a tumultuous offseason, to say the least. And which of the offseason move the Pats have made have most surprised you, and which one are you most excited about?
I think the moves that surprised me the most was cutting Kyle Arrington. And I know that kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, but for me personally, the way that I know that he was kind of overpaid, but when they let Darrelle Revis walk, I understood that. The Jets way outpaid for him. There's no way the Patriots ever could have matched that. When they cut Brandon Browner, I was kind of confused because they had they lost Revis already, but Browner, maybe they thought he was the product of Revis in the system. Maybe they didn't think he'd thrive without Revis, so you might as well cut your ties right there. I kind of understood that. They cut Alfonso Dennard. He didn't really play last season. I know he gave 2.5 great years of starting work, but there were behind-the-scenes issues that just weren't working out between Dennard and the coaching staff, so I understood that. Kyle Arrington. He has done everything that the team's asked for him. He's been a long-time starter. He's run the slot for a little bit. He's played on special teams. Yeah, he was slightly overpaid, but I was surprised that when they let those other 3 cornerbacks go, Kyle Arrington was the 4th, and the Patriots got rid of their top 4 cornerbacks. I was not expecting Kyle Arrington to be on that cutting block without a replacement in mind.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think obviously the big offseason question coming into 2015 is who the hell is going to cover besides Malcolm Butler. And honestly, obviously we can't knock him ever. He's like Kurt Schilling. He's now immortal, and he can let every single pass go as far as I'm concerned. But he struggled. He's up and down last season, and inconsistent. As a rookie. So he's not this lockdown guy we're expecting to take number 1 corners on. No, he's not a huge guy. He's undersized. He's quick, but he's not he's not going to be able to take on Calvin Johnson, for example, or Andre Johnson. Now he's with the Colts. So we don't really have a lockdown guy, and he's a starter, I'm guessing. And Logan Ryan, the other guy, the Eagle and Falcons cast-offs pretty much. I just don't know who we're going to start in secondary. I really don't.
Yeah, and part of me wonders if Darryl Roberts, the 7th-round pick out of Marshall, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets outright cut. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he stuns people and he's starting across from Malcolm Butler. There's a total toss-up on this one, and there's honestly Devin McCourty is the only known starter in that secondary. And then the Patriots used their 2nd-round pick on another safety. So I don't know why they gave Pat Chung his extension. They have Duron Harmon there. They already have Tavon Wilson, who's on the outs. I honestly have no idea what they're going to do with that secondary. But if you had to guess, if you had to project that starting secondary, you could include the nickel back, who would your top starting 5 be?
All right, so I'd probably do a lot more cover. One thing I liked about the Patriots last year was they could do a lot of cover 1 because Revis and Browner allowed for teams to press man. You could go one after another. You could keep McCourty back deep because he's fast enough to do it. And Revis and Browner really allowed for that. You really don't have that anymore. There's kind of, what I'm guessing is going to be a lot more shift to the kind of pass rush, soft zone, stiffen up in the red zone kind of thing. So I guess what I do is I do Butler, maybe Robert McClain on the outsides, and then maybe Bradley Fletcher, maybe Darryl Roberts if he has a great training camp on the inside. And then Chung is like an in-the-box safety and McCourty over the top. So I guess we do it that way. Butler, Ryan on the outside, Fletcher and McClain as slot corners. And then McCourty and Chung on running downs, and then McCourty and Harmon on passing downs.
Can you convince me to any degree that this defense will not be the same as that 2011 team? That they made it to the Super Bowl, yes, and we're so absolutely ridiculously spoiled as Patriots fans that the Patriots had the second worst defense of all time by yardage, and they still made it to the Super Bowl. Convince me that this defense won't be up to that level.
Here's what I can tell you right now. In 2011, the problem was there was a very soft zone defense in the secondary and no pass rush. There was Andre Carter and making their sack leader. There wasn't like a solid front seven to compensate for that lack of secondary. I think on paper the Patriots front seven is nasty. Ninkovich and Jones on the outside. Jabal Sheard, I think, is the off-signing of the season, the signing of the offseason, in my opinion. No one's talked about him. I think that was a great pickup. We got Ninkovich, we got Sheard, we got Easley. Malcolm Brown was an amazing pickup, and then the first round this year, Jones. And then you've got Dante Hightower, J.D. Collins, and Gerard Mayo. Plus you've got the combination of Siglia and Chris Jones and Alan Branch along the defensive line. So in theory, that front seven, the shifting around of that front seven, should be able to generate enough pressure so that the cornerbacks don't have to cover for 3-4 seconds. Now, will they execute that? I don't know. But I will say that the 2015 front seven is leaps and bounds better than 2011 front seven. So the hope is that those guys can compensate for any kind of coverage mismatches in the secondary.
Yeah, I'm also kind of intrigued to see where all of these draft picks fit into play. I mean, when you look at that front seven, they're extraordinarily young, other than Ninkovich, who's I think he's turning 32 this offseason, or maybe 31. But they're all very, very young, and part of me is kind of concerned that Malcolm Brown, Dominic Easley interior is another year away from being solid and trustworthy. But I'm also really, really intrigued to see where Geno Grissom, the third-round pick, and then Trey Flowers, the fourth-round pick. I really, really want to know where they fit into this defense, where you already have Chandler Jones, you have Ninkovich, you have Sheard, and then you add two more rookies into the fold. Do you think they're just planning for Ninkovich's retirement, Chandler Jones' departure? What is your thought on how they're going to use these two new guys?
I think with the loss of Will Fork, obviously they don't really have that kind of space eater nose tackle anymore. So a 4-3 shift makes a lot of sense. They played a lot of kind of 3-4, 4-3, kind of bounce a lot back and forth with Will Fork up there on the front, the nose tackle spot. They don't have him anymore. So I think they're going to be kind of just playing around. Belichick loves collecting bodies, especially defensive bodies. He just loves it. It used to be they trade their first round pick. Now it's they draft a safety or corner in the second round no one's heard of. That's their new move. And so I think he's just got as many guys on that front line as possible. He's going to see which 4-3 combination works best. Again, I think they're set at linebacker as long as Mayo's back healthy. All signs point to he will be. I think Hightower, Mayo, and Collins are probably the best three linebacker core in the league right now, or at least arguably in that conversation. So it's really about, I think, Belichick trying to figure out how to best put the pieces together. And the more pieces he has, the better off he's going to be. Yeah,
part of me kind of hopes that they can pull some of that 2011 Giants defense out of their hat with that NASCAR package. I would really, really like to see them use that, where they could have Sheard, Ninkovich, Jones, and maybe Dominic Easley all on the field at the same time, just rushing the quarterback. But I did notice that, I believe it was Mike DeSalt from Pat's Propaganda, he noted that the Patriots, each of the past 5 years, their blitz numbers have decreased. So I'm kind of wondering how the Patriots are going to try and compensate for that secondary, and I really, really hope that they're able to generate that pass rush up front.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be. They really have to be, because if they don't, I just don't think that the secondary, as it stands right now, can get the job done against Brandon Marshall, who's back in the AFC East. Against Sammy Watkins in the AFC East. Andre Johnson is now on the Colts. They have a lot of good receivers on the docket coming up this year. And if they can't get to the quarterback, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. On the plus side, we have seen that they can at least get to the Super Bowl with a crappy defense. It's doable. And in 2011, I'm not going to get into it because it's painful still, but they were basically a Wes Welker drop away from winning that game.
Yep.
And the Giants had a crap secondary that year too. But they, like you said, they could rush the passer, and they really got Brady's number that day. So it's very doable. I'm sure Belichick has a plan. I'm not going to sit here and watch the guys jock over it, but he's never at any point just like pulled a Chip Kelly and just cut guys for no reason. He's got some kind of scheme in mind, and whoever he's got on the roster come week one will be the guys that best fit that scheme.
Yeah, agreed. And when kind of looking at that playoff picture, though, I mean, you said Patriots can make it to the Super Bowl with a really, really terrible team, terrible defense. Now, honestly, when you just look at the AFC, who really scares you right now? Like, who out of the teams you think will make the playoffs, and how many of them do you think will be able to make noise when it comes down to it?
Like right now, the only team, as always, that I just don't want to see in the postseason is Baltimore. I think that that's just always going to be a grind them out, can really go either way game. They're both two very solid teams. I don't think the Colts did anything on defense. The Patriots ran all over them twice last year. They did nothing to address that. They stacked their offense up, but that's not going to matter if you can't stop the run. I don't know what we're going to see out of Peyton Manning and the Broncos. I genuinely don't. If it's going to be early season Peyton Manning, that's fine for the first half of the season. But when it gets cold again, will he start to go noodle arm down the stretch? I always never want to count the Chargers out, but every year I feel stupid for not counting the Chargers out. They always find a way to charger themselves out of the playoff contention. So it's really only Baltimore right now that really genuinely gives me a playoff concern. I kind of wish – I'm glad we're not, but I kind of wish we were playing the Steelers a little later in the season to get a little more of a playoff preview, because they're going to be good this year. They're always around. But there's no real legitimately dominant AFC team, besides the Patriots, other than the usual suspects. But none of the usual suspects, Colts, Broncos, have really done anything this offseason to make me go, oh, crap.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think it'll come down to either the Patriots or the team from the AFC North that just decides to kick down the door.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't count on Andy Dalton and the Bengals whatsoever. I mean, they've proved nothing at this point. But honestly, if they get on a hot streak at the end, maybe Andy Dalton will get his first playoff win. Maybe Marv Lewis will get his first playoff win in the past century. Maybe they'll make some noise. They have a quality defense. They have great coaching on that side of the ball. They have so much talent on the offensive side. Something has to happen at some point. Maybe if they just don't play the Colts or something like that, maybe they'll pull out a win. But I do honestly think that'll come down to the AFC North or the Patriots with the AFC representation this year.
So who are your division winners in the AFC?
I still go for the Patriots in the East. I would say that Baltimore in the North, purely because the Steelers have to play all the division winners. I do think that the Steelers do get a wild card spot. In the South, you go with the Colts. I mean, that's a very, very weak division.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the West, that's really, really tough. I'm still going to give it to the Broncos. I think that the songs of Manning's demise are slightly premature. I don't think that he will be that same dominant player that he was in 2013 or 2004. I think that he'll still be a good quarterback. I mean, he can still sling it for 35 touchdowns and keep his picks under 20. So, I mean, he'll still be a top 10 guy. He can make it happen. They have so much talent on both sides of the ball. Their defense is just ridiculous. I'm not going to say that as a unit, but individually, a lot of their players are just tops at their position. They don't really gel together, but they have so much talent in that secondary. I think that the Broncos will win that, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers and then maybe some team from the AFC East, possibly the Dolphins, get the 2 wild card spots.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with that. I think it's going to be. I think the wild card race is going to be interesting this year. I think it's probably 5 or 6 teams you can make a very strong case for taking those 2 wild card spots. But other than that, I think it's going to be pretty much the same old we saw last season with the AFC division winners for sure. Go back now. We talked to the Patriots on the defense side of the ball. Maybe we can close out with the Patriots on the offensive side of the ball. Brady under center. We're both pretty confident he's around at least week 1, if not the entire season. Their offense, they lost Ridley, They lost Vereen. They have LeGarrette Blount. They picked up Tavares Cadet, which I think was a nice little sneaky pickup they made. James White's still on the roster. I know the coaches are high on him. Do you see any kind of offensive philosophy shift from 2014 to 2015? Or still going to be more of the same, the run when they can run it, pass when they can pass it, game plan according to their defense they're facing? Do you see it being more of a high-flying attack? Are they going to custom tailor their offense to score Tom Brady as many points as possible as you light the league on fire? What do you see their offensive strategy being going forward?
I do think that they game plan. I think they had a lot of success with that last year, and that involves what running back they will play against which team. Last year, they showed a very, very strong commitment to using Shane Vereen against really, really good defensive lines because they could just get him out in space and throw him the ball quickly. And then against weaker lines, they used Blount and Gray and Ridley and just jammed him up the middle. I think they'll definitely do that next year. But also, when you look at the personnel groupings that they had for last year, they had a running back on the field for nearly 100% of the time, regardless of the situation. It helps a lot when it comes to flexing players out to draw linebackers into mismatches, and it also keeps someone in the back just to catch people off guard or use them as an additional blocker for blitzes. So I do think that they'll always have a running back on the field no matter the time, and I do think that it'll be Blount and then maybe Cadet, maybe even Brandon Bolden as that pass receiving running back. I think those two will always be on the field at some point. When it comes to the other four skill players, Gronk is 100% snap guy. Edelman's near 100% snap guy. LaFell is a near 100% snap guy. And that really just leaves one other position that will kind of be shared amongst everyone according to the game plan. And last year that was either Danny Amendola, sometimes it was Tim Wright, it was James Devlin, it was Michael Kumano-Wanui. They rotated that last fifth spot a lot, and I think this year it'll be more of a 50-50 split between Amendola and Scott Chandler, and that'll be based off of the matches that they see. I think that they'll want Chandler against some of the smaller, faster defenses, and then they'll want Amendola against some of the larger, more strong defenses so he can slip behind them. But I do think that you'll primarily see that's rotation in that fifth spot, and you'll see a rotation at the running backs, but the other three guys will be pretty set.
Are you ready to pull the plug on Aaron Dobson?
Ooh, tough question. I mean, I don't think that he's done, but I don't see an opportunity, barring an injury to Brandon LaFell, that would open a door for him in New England again. I think that he could have potential. He could thrive with a different team that gives him greater opportunities. I will say I wasn't the biggest fan of his when they first drafted him. I turned to 180 in the middle of his rookie season. I went all in. I thought that he would be great, and then he got hurt 6 times, 10 times, 50 times in his foot. And then he missed the off season. He wasn't able to climb that depth chart, wasn't able to be 100% due to the screw in his foot. And he just kind of trickled behind LaFell, behind Timms. And honestly, the only way that wide receivers develop in this league is if they see the field and if they see snaps with their quarterback. And I mean, that's what the Steelers and the Packers are so good at, is getting their young guys time with their starting offense. And that's why they're able to develop. But I honestly, the way that Belichick works is that if you don't deserve to see the field, or if someone else deserves it more, they're going to get those snaps. And LaFell has earned that. And I don't really see a chance for Dobson to see that field unless he slips into that fifth spot that's already shared by Chandler and Amendola. So I don't really know if he has an opportunity to make it in this team. And so I'm not willing to pull the plug on him overall. I am willing to say that I don't think his hopes are that high with New England themselves.
I wish I could disagree with you, but I don't. I agree with that. I just think that wide receiver is one of those areas where Belichick struggles in the draft. He hasn't really done well. And any receiver he's drafted that's excelled, he's gotten late. And Dobson was a second-round pick. I just don't see him. I think his time hasn't gone, like you said, but I don't think he'll be an asset going forward. And if he's one of those late preseason cuts, I will not be surprised by it at all.
Yeah, do you think Belichick really regrets using that? I mean, you just look at the talent that's come out at this wide receiver position over the past couple of seasons. And sorry if you can hear the clicking right now. I'm trying to come up with a list of all of those players. I mean, there's just been such a glut of all these studs coming out in the first couple of rounds. I'm just going to pull them up right now.
Yeah.
But do you think that he really regrets that? I mean, let's just run through the list. I mean, people who I know that Dotson was picked 59th overall. So after that year, they missed out on Terrence Williams and Keenan Allen, who both have been fantastic for their respective teams, the Cowboys and the Chargers. But other receivers that have come out in that rough time frame, I mean, right after that, the following season, there was just so many players. They had Marquise Lee, I think, honestly, he's going to be great in Jacksonville. He could play a very, very similar role in New England. Then you have, like, Allen Robinson, who's also with Jacksonville. He was taken 61st overall, different draft year, but same sort of result. Jarvis Landry, 63rd overall by the Dolphins. He is going to be their number one guy. He's a slot guy, but he's best friends with Odell Beckham Jr., so they have the same hand skills. They would play with each other and just work those out after practice, just with their one-handed grabs.
Yeah.
And like, there's just been so much talent coming out, and I think Belichick's really missed on that one.
No, he has. I think he's good at drafting certain positions. He drafts great tight ends, obviously. He's good on the D-line usually. But like offensive skill positions, he just hasn't drafted well. He just hasn't. And that includes quarterbacks, honestly. Tom Brady was lightning in a bottle at 199. Kevin O'Connell flamed out. He hasn't really done well on the offensive skill position. Lawrence Maroney was no good. Chad Jackson, Bethel Johnson. I loved Bethel Johnson back in the day, but he obviously didn't pan out either. He hasn't done well on the offensive side of the ball on the skill positions. O-lineman, he's got solid. Tight ends, he's got. Defensive line, he's got. Secondary, he kind of just throws as many darts at the wall as he can. But again, at the same time, hindsight's always 20/20. You always know who you could have gotten. And sometimes you just have to take a risk on a receiver. You just have to do it. You can't just keep picking guys up via free agency. But it's always tough to look at the guys that the Patriots could have gotten that were on the board versus who they've got catching the ball and see what happens.
Yeah, agreed. So I guess we'll finish with this last point. Question for you, dark horse. Who is your player on the fringe that you think will have the biggest impact this year?
On the fringe in terms of may not make the team, or just kind of a lesser spoken of player?
Lesser spoken of player. Let's go with that one.
I'm going to say, I said it earlier, but I'm going to reinforce it. Tavares Cadet, I think, was a great pickup. I think he's one of those guys, if you watch the limited highlight film he has in New Orleans, he was not utilized very often. But when he was on the field, he was fantastic. He's kind of got that Shane Vereen mold. He can catch balls out of the backfield. He's got a couple of beautiful deep sideline wheel routes that he ran, which the Patriots kind of like the motion there with their backs out. Vereen was a big loss. Going to the Giants, that was a big loss for them. He was a monster in the Super Bowl. And I think it's going to be important to have somebody who can catch the ball out of the backfield, the outlet receiver, the mismatch in the coverage. The only question I have about Cadet is I have not seen him enough in game film with blitz pickup. And blitz pickup is a huge part of being a running back for the Patriots. But I think he's going to do well. I think he's one of those guys. Everyone will know who he is come November, December, and he's my guy.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, I think my guy is going to be Shaq Mason. He's the 4th round pick, offensive lineman. Belichick said that he was the best run blocker in the entire draft, and even if he doesn't win a starting role, I think that both guard spots will be held down by Ryan Wendell and then fellow 4th round pick Trey Jackson. I think that Trey Jackson has a better overall skill set at this current point in time, or I guess I should say better technique overall at this point. But I think Shaq Mason has tremendous athleticism. I think that he has a lot of potential. He's a very, very smart player. I think that he has skills and athleticism that you just have to have on the field. And I honestly have a surprise cut. I don't know if James Devlin will make the team, but I do think that it would be absolutely incredible to see Shaq Mason line up in that fullback spot and just plow through everyone.
If the commenter James Devlin is listening right now, I do not support Rich's opinion at all. I think he's full of it. I think James Devlin no problem. No, but you're not wrong. A lot of guys are making they're making a lot of switches. Jake Paquette is now a tight end apparently. So you never know with the Patriots who's going to line up where.
Yeah. So hopefully in Belichick they trust.
Yeah, indeed. And so obviously this was the first attempt at a podcast. Hopefully it was at least somewhat successful. I can tell all of you we will only get better at this as time goes on. I'm sure we'll figure out the formatting and the structure and how to get more people involved, more callers involved, more participants involved. We can hopefully grow this into something pretty cool. Any final words you want to depart on us, Rich?
I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Hopefully we get at least 10, and they're not all my parents.
Indeed to that. I tell my mom to listen, but she's not going to understand it anyway. So if any of you have any comments, feel free to leave them, and we'll try and tailor this to your needs and your wants and your subject matter. And hopefully we'll be back on before long. Rich, thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks for having us, guys.
I'll talk to you later.